I'd like to make a motion to have Jen as the president.
Alrighty, so there's a motion.
second it.
Is there a second?
I'd like to
All
make
right.
a motion to Carla as president.
Okay, so we have a motion for Jen to be president, and then we have a motion for Carla to be president. Is there a second for the motion for
I
Carla? Okay.
I second
so
for
we have-
Jen.
For Jen, okay. So, with that, we'll take discussion for Jen.
Am I supposed to say something? I'd be happy to serve as president again. Thanks for the nomination.
Do we need to take a vote on it, or?
Yeah.
We can go ahead and take a vote.
I'll make a
That's
motion.
fine.
I'll make a motion to have Jen as president of the town board for 2022.
Okay, so we
I
have a
second
motion and a second on that. So, Jen, do you want to do the roll call?
Yeah. So this is to make me president of the town council for 2022. How do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
How do you vote, Stan?
Yes.
How do you vote, Ron?
Yes.
And Carla?
Yes.
Okay. So that carries 4-0.
All right, Jen, do you want to take it from here?
Yeah, I sure do. Thank you. All right. So now I'm going to take nominations for vice president of the Dayton Town Council.
I would nominate Stan for vice president.
Is
Seconded.
there a second? Okay.
Second.
There's been a motion by Carla and a second by Ron to have Stan serve as our vice president for 2022. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, how do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
And how do you vote, Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that passes 4-0. I will take nominations for utility board president then. I'll nominate Ron for utility board president.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to have Ron serve as utility board president. Is there any discussion? All right, how do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Stan?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that also passes 4-0. All right, we need a utility board vice president.
I nominate Carla for utility board vice president.
I second it.
Okay, Stan has nominated Carla for utility board vice president, and Ron has seconded that. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, how do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Stan?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that makes Carla our utility board vice president. All right, all the officers have been selected for 2022. I'm just gonna leave all the department appointments the same as last year. So the police liaisons will be Ron and me, Jen. Finance will be me, building and maintenance will be Ashley, roads and streets will be Stan, and area plan will be Carla. All right, we'll move on to our meeting. It's January 3rd, 2022, and we are holding a special meeting of the Dayton Town Council.
This conference will now be recorded.
Let me repeat that because I just remembered to push record. It's January 3rd, 2022. We are holding a special meeting of the Dayton Town Council. This meeting is being held by phone because of the COVID-19 pandemic and in compliance with the governor's executive orders. This meeting is open for the public to listen in real time and via recording afterward, and an option has been provided for residents to speak during the meeting on agenda items. Present on the phone are our attorney, Alicia Albertson, clerk treasurer, Michelle Freeward, town manager, Mark Harlow, Town Marshal Scott Taylor, and the 5 members of the Town Council who will identify themselves by roll call. Ashley.
Here.
Dan.
Here.
Ron.
Here.
Carla.
Present.
And I am Jen, and I'm here. So all 5 council members are present. First on the agenda is, next on the agenda is our attorney. Alicia, do you have anything for this meeting?
I do not have anything for this meeting.
Okay. Next on the agenda is the Shady Lane cul-de-sac. So we couldn't pave the end of Shady Lane in 2021 because it turns out Dayton doesn't actually own the land to the end of the road. Ron Kohler and Cindy Marsh are the landowners, and they've agreed to deed the land over to the town with restriction that it will only be used for a cul-de-sac. And we do have the restrictive covenants that will follow the land. And as soon as the town of Dayton approves this, we can ask Alicia to prepare the paperwork. So I'm going to have Ron explain the restrictive covenant, but he is going to abstain from voting on this because he's one of the landowners. Ron, will you explain real quick that restrictive covenant for us?
Sure, I guess so. The
Okay.
purpose of the restrictive covenant is to make sure that the land we are donating at the end of Shady Lane will be used for a cul-de-sac or area for adjoining property owners to be able to access their driveways. And it's not to be for Ashley or anybody else to try to use it to connect Shady Lane and Wesleyan Drive to steal our land and retaliate against us. So that's why we're donating it for the use of a cul-de-sac.
Okay, perfect. So do we have a motion about transferring the end of Shady Lane to the town of Dayton?
I make a motion to accept the restrictive covenant and ask Alicia to prepare paperwork to transfer the land described in the covenant to the town of Dayton and allow Jen to sign the paperwork when it's ready.
Was that you, Carla?
Yes.
Okay. So we have a motion made by Stan and seconded by Carla to accept the restrictive covenant and then have Alicia prepare the paperwork and have me sign it when it's ready. Is there any discussion before we vote?
I'd like to add to the discussion.
Okay.
I think the town of Dayton would be well served to have a engineering study done on a potential cul-de-sac in that area and let the engineering company tell us what land is needed to facilitate a cul-de-sac. And then at that time, you know, the landowners could get involved in it. If they want to donate it, so be it. If not, then the town would buy it off of them. I think we are getting the cart before the horse here. And as I said, you know, the engineer needs to tell us what land is needed to accomplish the task.
I'd like to comment on this.
Last year when we were out there, Ashley, when we were going around all the streets, all of us, I think Carla was at work, but me, you, Mark, Ron, and Stan were all back there. And there were like stakes in the ground, and it was like a cul-de-sac is this many feet around, so it'll be this much from here and this much from here, and you can't really move the cul-de-sac any other way, or you're going to be at the homeowners like on the left there, like you're going to be at their front door. Like this has already been discussed. This has already been.
Yeah. Well, Jen, I think at that time what you had was a bunch of board members with tape measures speculating on you know, what a cul-de-sac would look like. Okay, so I agree. You know, with our discussion back then, you know, we were to the point now. It sounds to me that, you know, you have engineers draw it out and measure it, and you know, shoot elevations and whatever else needs to be done, so you know exactly what land you need to facilitate having a you know, circular cul-de-sac in that area. And I think spending money to acquire land's a little bit premature right now. You know, I think, you know, we're getting the cart before the horse.
Can I
Well,
say
how much
something
money are we
here?
spending to acquire this land?
Well, I'm not talking about money to acquire land, okay? You know, I'm just saying, have engineers look at it, draw it out, so you know exactly what you
Well,
need.
BF&S has already looked at it.
Can I add something here?
They did a preliminary engineering study. A preliminary engineering study. They did basically a rough draft. Okay, so now you take that rough draft, if that's the plan you're going with, give it to the engineers and have them, nail it down, and then present it to the board. And then the board, if landowners want to donate or whatever, that's great. And then you put it into place. Right now, you have somebody donate land. Well, what if it's not enough, or what if you need 5 more feet here, or 3 less feet over there, or something like that? Then you're, going through the legal paperwork again.
Ashley, did you read Exhibit A in the restrictive covenant? It spells it all out. Part of the northwest corner of Section 9, Township 22 North, Range 3 West, Town of Dayton, Sheffield Township, Tippecanoe County, Indiana. It goes on, and then commencing at the northeast corner of the northwest quarter of said Section 9.
I get the legal description. Save yourself.
Okay, but then at the bottom, do you see that it says this description was prepared for the Town of Dayton by BF&S, our engineers?
So you're saying that the Town of Dayton's already done the engineering study on it?
Yes. Can I
BF&S
say
already.
something? Can I say
Yeah,
something?
sorry. Go ahead, Ron.
If that
Okay,
was the case,
Ashley, let me talk here. You've talked about 5 times here. This study was done by this engineering map was done by BF&S, and those stakes that Jen talks about in the ground were put there by BF&S when we met up there. It is drawn out on the map. It also is the same thing as when VS and you guys 4 years ago, or 3 years ago, 4 years ago, had another engineers draw the cul-de-sac up there. It's in the same place as the other one. So we've had 2 engineering firms draw this cul-de-sac. And as with these roads, how it goes is, like when we're bidding this and doing grant money and everything, the engineers come in afterward, like on Harrison Street and whatever other street, and they engineer it as we go along and do the final tweaking it as we go before we actually put it out for bid. But it's already done. It's already on paper. You can't move it because of Laniger's house is up there. We're trying to put it so it's right at the end of the street where the cul-de-sac is. It's just taking a 3/4 triangular cul-de-sac and making it a circle. And all of it, it's not touching anybody's land except Cindy and I's land, and we're selling it to the town for a measly $1. So you've known about this for a long time. We've done everything. We've had people up there. We talked about it, and this is the final step before we vote on it.
I have a question.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Carla.
Okay. So, Alicia, so BF&S has done the study. Everything's there. We get down to when we purchase the land for the $1, we get down to ready to lay it, and all of a sudden they say, oh, we need another 10 feet over here. Does that become a problem with the landowner, with the restrictive covenant that we have designed now, or can that be amended at the time? If the current landowners are willing to donate any additional land for that cul-de-sac at the time, if it becomes a necessary thing to happen at the time.
To answer your question, the landowner could absolutely donate more land if it was needed for the cul-de-sac. What is laid out, it was surveyed and there's a legal description for that currently. If we needed an additional 10 feet or something like that, all we would have to do would be to survey that 10 feet or add 10 feet to the legal description, and then the landowner could donate that land as well, and it wouldn't be any problem. The only thing that would be an additional cost is that we would need to do an additional deed to deed that over from the landowner to the town. At this point, because Ron and Cindy are selling it for $1. They have prepared the deed already. So that doesn't need done. They will sign it over to the town, and then it just needs to be recorded. And so there are recording costs associated with that. But Ron had that prepared at his own expense from his own attorney, and then I simply reviewed it. And that would be the same thing if the landowner wanted to donate additional land. An attorney could prepare that, and we could review it. So that's where we're at.
So there would be no real issue for the town going forward if we accept this tonight, and then when we're ready to pave all that and get the cul-de-sac done, and we run into a problem, we're not going to have a problem, so to speak, because the
only way
is wrong.
Sure.
Go ahead.
The only way that I could see us having a problem is if there was a timeline associated with a grant and we were unable to meet that timeline for some reason. So if we were trying to use grant dollars to pave this and there was some timeline that said we had to have all of this laid out and everything like that, but chances are that's not going to be an issue, because before we even get to the paving stage, we would have to know the engineering aspects of the cul-de-sac. So I don't anticipate that would be a problem, but that's the only one I could foresee.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alicia, it's Michelle. Can I ask you a quick question?
Absolutely.
So are they trying to vote on and approve or accept that document that was presented at the council meeting in December? Is that what they're saying that they're approving or accepting?
Essentially what they're doing is they're just accepting the gift of the land. And so that document is the document that would give that land to the town. So they don't really, the council doesn't really need to approve that document. That would be signed by the landowner exclusively. But the council is accepting that land for $1, essentially. So there's no document really that the town needs to sign.
Okay, because you were talking about the restrictive thing, but I just want to make it for the record that once again, I've not received any of these documents that's being addressed to the council or being offered per our town ordinance. So I just wanted to put that on record that even though I let them know at the last, I still have yet to be provided with these documents like I'm supposed to per our ordinance.
And
I try
Michelle,
to get all documents up on the website. That restrictive covenant's been on the website for quite some time now.
I'm not responsible for printing stuff off the website. I'm supposed to be, so I don't need to go on the website. I'm an elected official. I'm supposed to get the documents. I shouldn't have to search for them.
Okay. Michelle,
any documents, period.
Michelle, I would agree that we should start, and in the future, we should make a point to try and include Michelle in the conversations, just so that the town has all of the information that it needs. For this particular document tonight, the town doesn't need to approve the document. It was more for informational purposes only, as the landowner is the one that would need to sign that document. They're just approving the concept of accepting the land from the landowner as a gift or being sold for $1.
Correct. And per our ordinance, it says any communication, petitions, letters, or anything is to be delivered to the clerk treasurer, as I am the record keeper. So anything that is addressed at any town meeting or given to the council, I'm supposed to have to meeting folder as the records keeper and as the ordinance reads. Not read anything that's being voted on. It's saying anything that is addressed or being considered by the town council. So obviously this document is something that is being considered, as it was stopped at the last meeting because I had not received it. So I'm just saying, for once again, and for transparency, that I am being denied these documents that is my elected duty to have as the record keeper. I just wanted to put it on the record. That's all I have to say.
Okay. Well, I would agree that the ordinance does say that we should give those documents that are being considered at the meeting to Michelle. So in the future, we should make every effort to ensure that we're complying with the ordinances of the town.
Yep.
Yeah, Alicia, Ashley Stevenson here. Is there any problems using public monies for work on an area like this, with it being a restricted area.
I don't think that there would be any, Ashley, to answer your question, I don't see any problems with using money to pave a cul-de-sac. If that's the intention of the town, that should be a cul-de-sac and we're trying to pave the cul-de-sac and it meets the restrictive covenant requirements, I don't see any problem utilizing the land in the way that it was intended to be used. If we were doing something that wasn't qualifying for the restrictive covenant, then I would see an issue with using town funds for that. But I think the town wants a cul-de-sac there, is my understanding. It benefits members of the town, and we're within the restrictive covenant by deeding this property to the town. The town now owns it. They aren't allowed to do much with it, but they can use it for that purpose of having a cul-de-sac. So I don't see any reason that there would be any issues with utilizing public resources for that. It would wholly depend upon the terms of any grant if they had some sort of language in there that said that we couldn't do something like that. But typically, as long as the town owns the land, we should be fine.
Okay. And then as far as the state, using state money on it, I don't know, maybe you couldn't really answer if they'd have a problem with using their money in the form of a 75% matching grant to Dayton's 25% on community crossings.
I cannot speak to whether or not they would have a problem with it because it would depend on the terms of the grant. Typically, though, as long as the land is being used in a manner that is for the public benefit, which I believe this would be, and the land is being used in accordance with the restrictive covenant, and the town owns the land, which we would meet all of those, typically it wouldn't be a problem. Now, each grant has their own guidelines, and I haven't read that grant at length to tell you whether or not we would meet those qualifications, but I would think it shouldn't be a problem.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Alicia, one thing is we got to remember too, Shady Lane, part of it coming in used to be Cindy and I's land too, and the same thing happened, and the town has used grant money and town money to pave it and redo it down there. So I don't think there's any problem on anything.
Like I said, my guess would be that there wouldn't be.
Yeah.
Any further discussion about this before we vote? Okay, the motion was to accept the restrictive covenant and ask Alicia to prepare any necessary paperwork and then allow me to sign anything that I might need to sign. So we will take a roll call vote. How do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Stan?
Yes.
Ron is going to abstain from voting. How do you vote, Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes. So that passes 4-0 with one abstention. Okay, next on the agenda is attractive nuisance properties. Ashley, you had asked for this to be on the agenda. Do you want to kind of explain this?
Yes, I've had a great, over the past year, I've had a great number of town residents repeatedly ask me about a house that had been on fire at, I think it's 304 Dayton Road. It's there by the Dayton Town Hall across the street, wanting to know the status of that and why nothing is being done with it. And, I think, the town board ought to talk to the property owner or maybe have somebody on the county level contact the property owner and see if we can, remedy, the situation. I don't know if the house is rebuildable or not, or if it needs to be torn down or not, but, it is, appears to be a safety hazard. Obviously, if you're a neighbor, having a house that's been on fire to the extent that it's been on fire would, certainly affect your property value and such. And, I think we need to, take up the issue, for our town residents and try to get something done with the house, either rebuilt or torn down.
And I I have not had a great number of people ask me about that, but over the last couple of years, I have had people ask about that house or the one on South Street or the one on, Scott would know. It's off of Clifty. What's that road? Shakamak, maybe? Shakamak Court? Maybe. Anyway, there's a few around town that have been questioned
I can
over the
bring you
last
guys
couple of
up to
years.
date on
So,
this house.
well, I was just going to say that Scott, you can chime in if I'm misquoting, but he has kind of looked into these things, and we don't really have anything in our ordinance that says we can go in there and like demand people to do anything. Scott does, contact the people that own the properties to get them mowed or to get them boarded up or whatever. But if I remember correctly, we don't really have anything in our ordinances that gives them authority to be like,
Yeah, Jen.
do what I'm saying right now, or this other thing is going to be a consequence.
Jen, could I add something?
You absolutely can. Go ahead.
Okay, first of all, this property is one of several around town that has a problem with it, and I agree with it, and I agree with Ashley that something needs to be done with it. It happens to be owned by my brother, and I have asked him repeatedly to do something about it. Last week I checked with Area Plan, and they told me what needs to be done. That the only concern they got, they checked with their engineers, and they got back to me in their enforcement code. And what needs to be done on these houses, they need to be boarded up and be safely kept so people can't enter them. And so today we boarded up the windows. That was last week they told me that. We boarded up the windows and put security chain link fence around the entire half of the building. So now nobody can enter that building. And it is still an eyesore, and it's still like some of the other houses, definitely needs to have something done with them. Some of the other houses, by the way, have been needing something done with them for up to 10 years now, I think, because I used to mow and take care of one of them because it got overgrown. But anyway, I told Area Plan that by next spring, something would be decided on it, and that house would either be rebuilt or torn to the ground. So they said that's fine. You can take whatever time you need, but they urged that you make a decision, use the winter to make a decision, and then have it ready to go somewhere in the spring or by summer. So it will be taken care of, and hopefully the whole entire place will be cleaned up. So that's all I got.
Okay. Did anyone else have anything they wanted to say about this topic?
Jim, this is Scott. Did you have a question for me?
No? Okay. If there's nothing else about that, then we will move on to these invoices.
I've got a
All
question
right.
for Alicia before we move on.
Oh, okay. Go ahead, Ashley.
Alicia, in your work with other clients, do they have language in their ordinances concerning, some of these properties that potentially could be safety hazards or at the very least eyesores?
Yes, they do. One of the things that the town council could do if they wanted to is you can adopt the Indiana Unsafe Building Code provisions, which allows municipalities to determine that buildings are unsafe and create a hearing authority and an enforcement authority. The hearing authority is the governing body that basically will decide whether or not the building needs torn down or if it needs repaired or what the consequences are for the building. The enforcement authority essentially is the person that goes out and says, this building is unsafe and something needs done with it. Typically, the enforcement authority for other municipalities is either a building inspector or the police force. The enforcement authority will notify the homeowner or the landowner and let them know that they have so many days to repair, destroy, whatever the property. If they don't do it within that amount of days, they go to the hearing authority, which allows them to have an opportunity to be heard. They listen to evidence from the enforcement authority and they listen to evidence from the landowner and determine what should happen with the property. That decision is appealable to the county court system, and basically it allows municipalities to tear down buildings that are blighted, that need to be torn down. So what you would need to do is you would need to adopt an ordinance that appoints the hearing authority and the enforcement authority and adopts the unsafe building code, and then you would be able to do that as the town. You wouldn't necessarily need to go to area plan every time there was a blighted structure. You could do it within the town limits on your own. And other municipalities have done that and do tear down buildings that are unsafe.
But if we already have unified zoning ordinances, we already have area plan that does all that, the building inspectors, this and that, the people that know what they're talking about, we already have them, and those duties have been assigned to them. It does not make sense to me to give Ashley, Jen, Ron, Stan, and Carla the authority to go tell somebody, yeah, you're going to need to tear that building down. We don't like that.
The downside also, Jen, the downside too is that if the town is responsible for it and the town tears down the building, the cost of the tear down is on the town. And the town can try and recover that money, but I'm going to be here to tell you that oftentimes it doesn't happen. So that expense would be a town expense as opposed to an APC expense. So that's the real downside of it. It allows you to take matters into your own hands, but you take matters into your own hands, you also have to pay for it. So there are some communities where they have the unified building code and the APC doesn't have the authority to tear down buildings, and that's when this statute becomes very important, because then they don't have any sort of recourse except for utilizing that statute for their municipality. If the APC is able to tear down buildings and they have the authority to do that and they've got that in their unified building code, it may not make sense for Dayton to have a similar thing, just because, again, you're going to be responsible for paying for it, and it can be upwards of $30,000 to $40,000 to tear down and clean up a building.
And I think we need to be extremely careful. I agree with Jen, and we have a process that right now we can go and make complaints to, and they tell us what to do. But this town is so political that you don't want it to get where this board has a vendetta against somebody or the next board has a vendetta against somebody. And because a few years ago, some of the members were actually talking about having the board decide on what color of houses you could paint your house in the town of Dayton. And I think that gets a little ridiculous. And I would think when we're talking about this one house, we'd also bring up the other houses in town that have been sitting there for years and years and years, and not just pick on one house in particular. So I think what Jen was getting at, it's critical that we don't politicize this and we let other entities control it and get the job done.
Yeah.
If I could say something, I'd like to know what board was trying to dictate colors of houses and such. But, Ron, I agree with you.
Well, you told me the last board you did.
Yeah,
you told me yourself, Ashley, that you think you thought there ought to be a committee that goes around and decides what color of houses you can use and what kind of siding and stuff.
Please give me.
You told me. I'm sorry, but you told me that. So.
No, I did not. That's ridiculous.
Yes, you did.
So I agree that this board or future board shouldn't be the committee. Alicia, I'm wondering if there's a way that the town of Dayton could. I assume Tippecanoe County probably has this type of committee. I was wondering if there's a way that the town of Dayton can utilize their processes and get them involved. I mean, obviously Dayton doesn't have a building inspector, and again, the way politics are, I don't think the Dayton Town Council should be the ones
That,
deciding this type of
actually,
stuff.
that's
But
what we're doing right now. I went to that board and I went to the higher ups in the county, and this is what they said to do. And if it stays a certain amount of time, then they will look into it and push to have it demolished or whatever. But that's what we're doing. We're going to that entity that you want right now. It's in place for a process to happen.
well, can we also do that on other houses that
Well, sure we
Jim had
can.
talked?
On all those houses around town that you guys drive by every day and don't comment about, you can call them up and file a complaint with them. I called up and filed a complaint on my own brother to get something done. And this is the steps of doing it. But I think everybody needs to pick on everybody and not just pick out one person in this town.
Ron, I'm not trying to pick out one person. As Jim mentioned,
Oh yeah.
there are other, a couple other houses, it sounds like. And, yes, I think all of Dayton's town residents would obviously like to see houses properly maintained if people are going to own them. So,
Yeah, okay.
so I guess we get a list together with these other few places that Jim had mentioned, and the town board will submit that to whatever agency in Tippecanoe County to have them take a look at them.
Okay.
Correct?
Correct.
Okay. Good discussion. Thank you.
Okay, was there anything else for that agenda item? Okay, we're going to move on to these invoices. All right. I move to approve the following Alpha Business Technologies invoices. Invoice number 214516 dated 12/17 of 21 for $2,480, and invoice number 214512 dated December 12th, 2021 for $200, totaling $2,680. Was that you, Carla?
Yes.
Okay, thanks. There's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve the Alpha Business Technologies invoices for $2,680. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay. How do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that's approved 5-0. I move to approve the following batteries plus bulbs invoice. Invoice number P469200903 dated 12/15 of 21 for $49.99.
Second.
There's been a motion made by myself. Thank you. There's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve the batteries plus bulbs invoice. Is there any discussion before we vote? How do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that's approved 5-0. I move to approve the following Cincinnati insurance bond number 6861759. It's dated 12/8 of 21 and it's for $75.
I'll second.
There's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve paying this Cincinnati insurance bond. Is there any discussion before you vote?
Yes. Can someone just clarify exactly what this is and what it means?
It's for Marshall Taylor. As I understand it, Marshall Taylor never had a bond until last year when all of a sudden it was brought up that, hey, why doesn't he have a bond? He needs to have one because money.
Okay. That's fine. I just want to be clear what it was for. Thank you.
With that being said, though, Marshall Taylor, if we do not get paid, we don't collect any money for gun permits. Is this something you would still need? Was it only because you were collecting money for gun permits?
I get a small amount for reports also.
Oh,
I collect.
okay. Thanks. Okay, is there any
It
other
just
You're welcome.
happened to caught when they were doing the update, and they just happened to ask me if he had ever collected money. And obviously, the gun permits, which we knew was going to be no longer, but like he said, he does get those small amount checks for those reports that he prints. So I think the smallest bond that they could do for him was like up to 5,000. So it's just to cover.
Okay.
Yeah. Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. How do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Stan?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's approved 5-0. I move to approve the following Econo Signs invoice. Invoice number 10-971048 dated 10/15 of 21 for $320.02.
Second.
There's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve the Econo Signs invoice. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, we'll take a roll call vote. How do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes. That's approved 5-0. The following invoices or receipts are all being reimbursed to me for the things that I bought for the goodie bags for when Santa came to Dayton. There's 2 Walmart receipts, one for $47.68, one for $4, a Sam's Club for $68.70, Target for $25, Aldi for $31.50, Amazon for $56.95, and Payless for $67.58, totaling $301.41.
Second.
Since this was mine, I was gonna stay out of it, so I was just telling you what they were. That wasn't a motion. Sorry.
Then I so move we pay those invoices for when Santa came to Dayton.
I second it.
There's been a motion made by Carla and seconded by Stan to repay me for those invoices for when Santa came to Dayton. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, how do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Stan?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
So those are approved 4-0, and I'll just abstain from voting. I move to approve Menards invoice 32794 dated 12/1 of 21 for $23.64.
Second.
There's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve that Menards invoice. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, how do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that's approved 5-0. I move to approve invoice number 20851 dated 12/22 of 21 from Ryan Moore, Cook, Triplet, and Albertson in the amount of $4,770.50.
Second.
There's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve the Ryan Moore, Cook, Triplet, and Albertson invoice. Is there any discussion before we vote? How do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Ann?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, that's approved 5-0. The next one is a reimbursement to Ron dated 11/14 of 21. It's for diesel fuel for when he did the lift station. It's $74.54. I move to approve that. He get repaid for that.
Second.
There's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to repay Ron $74.54 for the diesel fuel he purchased. Is there any discussion before we vote? How do you vote, Ashley?
Was this something that Ron has turned in, or because I have not seen that?
He gave it to me. I scanned it into the Dropbox. I'll give it to you. His receipt, and I don't think he gave me the blue paper, but I do have his receipt. I'll leave it in your.
Well, I'll need the receipt, not the Dropbox.
Yeah, I'll leave that in your metal bin thing outside your door. Is there any further discussion? Okay, how do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, that passes 4-0 with Ron not voting. I move to approve row invoice 929064 dated 12/2/21 for $107.
Second.
Been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve the row truck invoice. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, how do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, that's approved 5-0. I move to approve Schomer's invoice 163409 dated 12/6/21 for $700.95.
Second.
There's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve the Schomer's invoice. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, how do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, that is approved 5-0. I move to approve Taft invoice 3863254 dated 12/27/21 for $215.
Second.
Been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve this Taft invoice. Is there any discussion before we vote? Okay, how do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so that's approved 5-0 as well. All right, those are all the invoices. We'll move on to the report. All right, I move to approve the following reports from November 2021: the appropriation report, the bank reconciliation, the fund report, and the revenue report.
Second.
Okay, there's been a motion made by myself and seconded by Carla to approve the November 2021 report. Is there any discussion before we vote? How do you vote, Ashley?
Yes.
Dan?
Yes.
Ron?
Yes.
Carla?
Yes.
And I vote yes, so those are approved 5-0. All right, moving on to public comments. I've had none submitted, and there's no one on the call currently. So we have no public comment. Council comments. Ashley, do you have anything?
Yes. We had folks come to us at our last meeting wanting water and sewer, wanted to get agreement with the town of Dayton that Dayton would provide water and sewer to their property. I don't know, Jen, if you've reached out to Stephen Brock to see if he's willing to address our council. Stephen Brock's our consultant that we use for water and sewer, our rate consultant. He's quite knowledgeable about the subject and how that would, the pros and cons of how that would affect our rates. Have you had opportunity to speak with him, Jen?
Oh, yeah. I remember that you had asked me to do that, but two things. Since it's a utility issue, I kind of turned that over to Ron since he's utility board president. But more so,
Okay.
I was thinking, while I'm not opposed to getting information from any source, like the more information, the better, to make any decision. But I don't know that Steve Brock, I mean, if they came and said, yeah, we're putting a slaughterhouse up there, like just for an example, then maybe he could look at that and give us some sort of information. But I don't know how, without knowing anything about what might be going on up there, he can give us any good information. You know, it's just a guessing game at this point about how it would affect anything, because nobody knows what they intend to put up there.
I think he is. Go ahead, Ron.
Okay. When it was my time to talk, I was going to bring this up too, Ashley. Um, I'll be in contact with Brock as it goes along and it's needed, but it's sort of a little preliminary because usually we don't need a rate impact study until we know exactly what's going in there and everything. So it's a little premature and speculative. But while we're on this subject, what I wanted to what I was going to say is that at the utility meeting in January, we all need to bring questions to ask and get. We got a lot of questions. I've certainly got a lot of questions to ask CAR and their legal representation and everything. But this meeting will be for discussion only, and we're not going to be voting on it at the utilities meeting. Or this is a big decision up there, and there's a lot going into it. Getting things from, we have no idea if it's a trash transfer station or whatever, but we need to get more questions answered. And when you see some of these questions, there'll need to be discussion on them. And this is very important to the town of Dayton, what we do, and we can't rush this. We can't just jump into it. And what they're basically trying to do is get us to commit to something way ahead of time before we want to commit. And we just need to get a lot of things answered before and move slowly with this, because it's going to impact the entire town of Dayton, what we do and decide up there. So maybe we can work with them, maybe we can't, whatever. But next January, we need to bring any questions you have, and we'll discuss this.
So it sounds like this January meeting would be the perfect meeting to have Stephen Brock there. I disagree with Jim's synopsis of what information he can or can't provide to us. I find him, setting up utilities and keeping us in between the guardrails, so to speak, is what he does and does best. And I think he's led this town, as far as utilities and rates and such goes, very well for the past 30 or whatever years that we've had a water and sewer system out here. I would like for him very much to be at that meeting in January. And I think he could provide quite a few answers to some of these questions. Is there a problem with him being at our January meeting?
Well, yeah, because I think we first need to ask more questions on what's going to happen up there, what's going to be up there. He's just guessing whether it could. What if it's a trash transfer station? What if it's a water slide building? What if it's something's got one bathroom? We don't know. We need to do a lot more questioning, and then probably the February meeting we could maybe get him out if we deem it necessary. But I think we've got a lot of discuss. Actually, I think you're putting the cart before the horse, like you always say. That Steve Brock's going to come out and say anything you do up there, it's going to sell some water. But we've got to, it's like Malacca's out here. You got to know exactly what's going in there and everything to proceed with your discussion. It's a little early for Brock, so I'll call him up and see what his schedules are in the future, and we need to get him out to go over those other rate studies and stuff like that also. So maybe we could do it all the same time.
I think, when the petitioners, came to us at the last meeting, they were talking about 10,000 gallons per day usage. Now, whether or not that's for a water slide or something else, who knows? And I don't know that.
Ashley, they said 10,000 gallons. They're pulling something out of the air. We rezoned land down inside our town limits before, and they still haven't they never did do anything with it. They're taking a guess. They're just saying something to appease us or to try to tell us anything. They've gone against us on all our wishes. You know that, even your wishes that you signed on rezoning, annexation, and everything. They've fought us on absolutely everything, including the 60-foot limit signs and everything. They don't go along. They're like any developer up there. They're going to tell you the non-truth. They're going to lie to you to get what they want and hope you can jump ahead. And this is one thing. This is going to impact this town for the next 100, 200 years. At the entrance of our town, we need to take our time, study it, and really look at it, and not just jump to and have just a something that's wrong for the town of Dayton. Like I remember before people saying we never need more than one gas station. And then the board members said we'll never have more than two gas stations. Now we got three gas stations up there. And I think most of the people, it's the entrance of our town. We got to be careful. We got to be careful how it impacts us and everything. So let's just take it a little bit slow.
Well, I agree with you, but I disagree with you
Well,
on
good. Thank you.
as far as utilities are concerned. We have, you're absolutely right. Making the wrong decision on providing utilities out there, has potentially be disastrous. We've already given up the TIF district out there, and if we give up utilities, I think that's a big mistake. I think a knowledgeable person such as our consultant that we've used since the beginning of time for utilities needs to be in on the discussion, and be able to answer yours and other folks' questions. I think that's the reason he needs to be at this meeting, obviously. So.
Well, I disagree with you on that. I think he can't lend a lot of information before we know. We need to go through our steps, like I said, with the subdivision in Malacus, and find out exactly what's going in there, ask a bunch more questions, and then he can lend his knowledge to it. But he can't give us any knowledge on anything without really knowing exactly what we're going to do and what's going in there and what's proceeding up there. We don't even know that yet. So,
And
it'll be
I just
soon enough
point out,
here. Yeah.
I just want to point out that the landowner wants to do this shovel ready program, but they said themselves this is not a requirement. They want to have this shovel ready program. They want to be I don't know how it's rated, but they want to do that so that they can make more money, they can sell it faster, or they can do whatever. But this is not a requirement. There's nothing that says that the landowner can't, bring a developer in, and then we can talk to the person that's actually going to be on that land and discuss things with them. Like this, we're just being pretty much removed completely from the whole process. Instead of talking to the end user like we should be, they're just trying to cut us out. So this isn't something that has to happen. They don't have to have, our guarantee right this second. Okay. Ashley, did you have anything else?
No, I believe that's it.
Okay. Stan, do you have anything?
Nope.
Ron, do you have anything else?
I just want to say thank you to all four of you members on the board for letting us donate that land up there for the good of the town for a cul-de-sac for $1 bill. So we can go have a cup of coffee on that, but thank you for passing it.
Carla, do you have anything?
That'll be.
Carla?
Yes,
Did you have anything?
I do. I just wanted to bring everybody up to date on, I presume all of you remember that Truck Country had gone to the Board of Zoning Appeals for, they had 5 requests that they had initially presented to the board, 2 of which they withdrew before the December 1st meeting. At the December 1st meeting, 2 of the 3 remaining requests were denied, and at the December 1st meeting. And the last request, which was for I believe it was for the 60-foot variance for a 60-foot high sign instead of the maximum of 24 that was allowed. They then, on December 22nd, then withdrew that request. So all 5 of their requests are now no longer in play. So
Good. That's
just
great. That's
informational,
great.
nothing to present, nothing to vote, just so you're aware.
Good news.
Thanks. Was that all, Carla?
Yes, that's it.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. And I have nothing. So, having no other business before us, this meeting is adjourned. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.